Is becoming a cybersecurity analyst actually worth it? This could offend some people, but instead of just saying yes like everyone else, we're gonna take a closer look in this video and see if this job really is so great, or if it's overrated and something that you should avoid. We're gonna start with a breakdown of the job responsibilities, and then we'll talk about salaries, job outlook, and future growth, as well as job satisfaction and how real cyber analysts feel about their jobs. Finally, we're gonna talk about the pros and cons, and I'm not gonna hold back in this video at all, so drop a like and subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Starting with a quick explanation of what a cybersecurity analyst actually does. So the responsibilities will vary a lot depending on the organization and what they actually need from you. You might monitor different systems and networks to find security breaches or different suspicious activities. And you might also do a threat analysis to really understand the threat landscape and help prepare your organization to defend against different attacks. But it's not enough to just monitor and detect. You'll also want to prevent these threats by implementing measures in your organization to, well, prevent them. You might educate some people about security, you might set up some policies, or deploy different security measures in the system. And you're doing all of this to protect your organization by preventing, detecting, and responding to any threats. Now let's talk about salaries, and according to Talent.com, a cybersecurity analyst will make an average of $110,000 per year in the US. But the range is very wide, with $88,000 on the low end and about $145,000 on the high end. The main factors that will influence your salary would be your experience level, your location, and also of course the company itself, as some companies pay way more than others, for example the top companies like Google and such. Now if we compare this role to some other roles, we can see that a security engineer earns around $125,000 per year, a network engineer earns around $108,000 per year, a security analyst around $100,000, and system analyst at around $90,000. So as you can see, cybersecurity is generally a very high paying field, and if you reach the top roles in companies, your salary can also be significantly higher than what I mentioned, as these are just kind of the averages. It just depends on the path that you decide to take, and there are many that you can take. Now there's one really important question that we haven't answered yet, and it's the fact that are there actually jobs? Let's take a look at the job market and some real data to see how many jobs are actually available and how the job growth is looking, as well as if cybersecurity is a good field for the future, because you don't want to spend years just getting into a career or a field that's not going to be worth it in the long run. Now, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics actually estimated 168,000 jobs for this role in 2020, and the job outlook and the estimated growth between 2020 and 2032 is estimated to be around 32%. And this means that it's much faster than average, and that 32% more jobs should appear over the next 10 years, or 8 years as I'm recording this. And seriously, this number is really, really good. I mean, the growth is absolutely fantastic for this role, and it means that they estimate another 53,000 cybersecurity analyst jobs. If you look down here at the job outlook, they do claim that 16,800 openings will be available for information security analysts each year, or at least that's a projected growth on average over the decade. Many of these openings are expected from a result from the need to replace workers who transfer into different occupations or who are just exiting the labor force when they're, for example, retiring. So it's important to note that it's not going to be 16,000 brand new jobs per year being created, obviously, but many of these are just people leaving. But still, 32% growth is absolutely amazing. If we actually take a look at the unemployment rate for the information security analysts, it's about 1.2% according to US News, and a 1.2% unemployment rate is absolutely incredible. Moving on to the next part, and perhaps most importantly, are people actually happy with their jobs? Because if they could do it again, would they still become cybersecurity analysts, or would they do something different? Continuing on the US News data, we have a scorecard where they actually rank the job according to a few different criteria. Starting from the beginning, we have the salary, which they actually rated at 7.1 out of 10. Now, personally, I would rate this one even higher, but of course it also depends on your experience, your location and such, and everyone is not making insane salaries. They also gave the job market a 4.3 out of 10, and that is very surprising because the US Bureau of Labor Statistics actually predicted a huge growth, as we mentioned. Now, my idea here is that they're focusing more on how easy it is to get a job, and many of these jobs require a lot of skills. It's certainly not going to be an easy thing to get. I mean, the jobs, they do require a lot of effort and skills. And while the growth is very significant, and that's amazing, you're also competing with many highly qualified candidates candidates, especially at the entry level. So that's why I think they're putting it at a 4.3 rather than putting it, for example, at an 8 or something, because for the average person that doesn't have a very technical background, or even if they do have a technical background, it can be pretty hard to get into the field and get a job. It can be very, very difficult. But here they actually rank the future growth at 9.4% as well, which is not surprising considering the estimated growth we looked at before. So at least one thing is clear, and that is that the job growth is looking very good. And then when it comes to stress, they don't get a very good score. They actually put it at 4.5, which is pretty bad. But I guess it's also understandable. You're dealing with a lot of difficult stuff that's very important for the company, and they might also lead to some stress when you're doing it. It's not one of those jobs that you can just, completely shut off and clock out when you go home, because you might still be thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve and different ideas. And that can be really fun for the right person, but it can also add to some stress, especially when you're doing it over a long time, or you're not really in the field because you like it, but rather you're doing it for the money. And now let's take a look at work-life balance. And they actually give it a 5 out of 10. And I think many people in cybersecurity are pretty passionate about their jobs, so I don't really understand this one, because many people like security. So a good work-life balance really depends on your view of it. If you like what you do, then work-life balance can be a completely different thing rather than doing something that you hate. Now, moving on to job satisfaction in general, which is pretty good. They actually rated upward mobility very highly. And this means that the opportunities for advancements and salaries are very good in this field, which is pretty expected. I mean, we took a look at the salaries and they were absolutely amazing. One interesting thing, which I think many people are going to be interested in, is when it comes to flexibility. And they actually rated it at an average, referring to alternative working schedules and work-life balance. And when it comes to, for example, remote working or, working from home, cybersecurity does offer many options for this, but there are also quite a few companies that prefer to have you on site, and it really depends on what you're doing. In some cases, you're going to be limited by the work itself. It can be both due to company policies and also different security procedures or legal requirements. For example, like if you work for a government, they might have some confidentiality agreements and different, things that you have to sign, and you cannot live abroad, or for example, you actually have to come into the office every day. So it might really not be an option to work remotely, but there are definitely remote opportunities in cybersecurity, and it just depends on the job itself. Now, let's get to the pros and cons, and I usually discuss them kind of separately, but we've already mentioned them. The salary is very high, the growth is awesome, and the work is interesting and challenging. The main downsides are that it can be stressful, it has a pretty high barrier to entry, and it can also be competitive, especially at the entry level. In my opinion, for the right person, cybersecurity is an excellent field to get into. Now check out this video next if you're interested in cybersecurity, and make sure to drop a like and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. Most of you guys are not subscribed, and I try not to ask too much, but most of you guys aren't subscribed, so why not subscribe? I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.